Dredge is a Lovecraftian fishing game that's fully got its hooks in me. You play as a fisherman who moves to a new coastal town for a job, where the residents warn you of one thing: get back by sundown before the fog rolls in. Naturally, morbid curiosity got the best of me, and I sailed right into the night to see what was the worst that could happen. Admittedly, I have a limited amount of experience with infamous racist trash bag H.P. Lovecraft. I've listened to a handful of ebooks and have definitely enjoyed my fair share of Lovecraft-inspired media. If there's one thing that I know about the horror of H.P. Lovecraft, it's that it's simply impossible to describe. Literally. Because Lovecraft's horror presents itself as something that can't be known or understood, he would often sidestep attempting to paint a picture in his audience's heads by saying, "It's impossible to describe." So this has got me wondering, how have cosmic horror works attempted to depict the undepictable in visual mediums? Writing might have been perfect for Lovecraft because his narrators could just claim that something is impossible to describe and let the audience do the visualizing at home. But how have other books, films, comics, and of course video games attempted to visualize eldritch horror? The first thing that came to mind for me is the 2020 adaptation of Lovecraft's The Color Out of Space, starring Nicolas Cage. The story is about a meteor that crashed into Earth, seeps into the water and vegetation, and slowly drives the local people and wildlife mad. The meteor radiates you guessed it, color that's impossible to describe. I was excited to see how this would be executed in a film, and was slightly disappointed to learn that they had just used magenta for the color. I don't envy the people tasked with trying to solve this creative puzzle. If new colors can't be created, then how on earth do you adapt this story to a film? I initially thought an alternative could have been, what if the color was instead shown in grayscale, or a blinding bright white? I would later learn that there was a German adaptation of The Color Out of Space, released in 2010, that did the exact opposite. It was shot entirely in black and white, and it isn't until 1 hour in that the audience gets to see the color, which is again shown as a magenta. This feels like a very creative solution to me, having the audience adapt to seeing in black and white for so long before subverting with the color. Now, I gotta be honest, I personally don't do a ton of reading, so I'm gonna have to throw to my podcast co-host and books/manga correspondent James for some much needed insight.
Thanks, Richie. Or should I say, Eld Richie. Do you see what I did there? Though, asking out loud, I realize you aren't seeing it. Perhaps you're visualizing it. Maybe you're seeing Richie with a bunch of tentacles, or you're picturing me presenting puns to the chirping of crickets and groans of faceless patrons. This is exactly what so many authors in this unseen horror space rely on to really, dare I say, spook ya, your imagination. When asked to help out with this video, I was fortunate to be hot off the heels of reading Stephen King's latest novel, Fairy Tale, and yet another read-through of King's clown-based epic, It. Fairy Tale, like Alice in Wonderland and That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, it's essentially an isekai. The novel follows an average Earth boy named Charlie and his dog Radar as they're thrust into an unfamiliar world that has been absolutely goofed by unknown forces. Early in Charlie's adventure, he is warned of a being called Gog Magog that sleeps beneath the city. At this point, my brain is already painting the picture of a Cthulhu-ass slime monster whispering sweet in my ear. Throughout the novel, Stephen King provides a slow drip of horror that makes the reader feel the presence of this being weighing down on the characters and the world they inhabit. Whispers echo through the alleys of the ancient kingdom, and the mere mention of this being makes the ground shake. One character is shocked when Charlie casually speaks the name Gog Magog, and states, "Don't ever say that name. Do you want to wake what sleeps in the dark well?" Now here's where the challenge presents itself. Should King A, describe the monster, or B, leave it up to the reader? The answer may surprise you, but just like the meme of the guy hitting both, buttons on the soda machine, we're getting a little bit of both. I'll keep spoilers vague, but we are taken down to the dark well, and the circumstances allow for Gog Magog to awaken and begin its ascent. Here, a single thorny wing appears from the well, along with massive golden eyes. The rest of the body, though, is completely obscured, and when our hero forces the creature back into the well and seals it off, we're left with the question, How deep is this damn well? And those are the questions that just scare the hell out of me. Like the galaxy-vomiting space turtle tells Bill Denbrough in It, once you get into cosmological shit like this, you got to throw away the instruction manual. Even Pennywise, the titular clown/cosmic entity of It, provides a taste of eldritch horror revealed via something just referred to as the deadlights. One look at these causes the victim's mind to break, as it's something the human mind can't comprehend. Sure, King is essentially saying, whoa, indescribable horror cannot be described. But we're left to imagine the horror by reading what simply gazing at these does to its victims. That's a pretty nice touch too. Now I'm sure Richie wants his video back, but I'd be a fool to release him from the dark well without mentioning Junji Ito or Go Tanabe. In August of 1998, Ito released the manga Uzumaki. Where color out of space is a town haunted by a color, Uzumaki follows a town haunted by a shape. More specifically, a spiral. What first boils down to a weird obsession in some people turns into pure terror for the characters getting twisted up in this. Since this is a manga, Junji Ito is able to perfectly draw what terrible body horror these spirals bring to this town. I imagine most people have probably seen some of these manga panels, which are hella scary, but the real terror comes from the story. Where did these spirals come from? What about the spirals that lets them turn this guy into a living Cinnabon cinnamon roll? What's next? Should I be afraid of rhombuses? Are rhombuses scary? I don't know. Tanabe, however, had a much different task. The mangaka was given the rights to create an adaptation of Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness. Lovecraft was always tossing out weak adjectives like unimaginable or indescribable. But I mean, look at this. This guy just drew the things Lovecraft couldn't explain. And to be honest, it all looks pretty comprehensible. With the exception of this one blacked out panel in the manga. I guess my point here is that through written media, there are plenty of works that have found the perfect balance between just describing the monster.jpg while still leaving enough out to make me afraid of the whispers coming from the sewers. As Stephen King once said, description begins in the writer's imagination, but should finish in the reader's. Yeesh, okay, I'm gonna get Richie out of Toadash space before it's too late. Here's some books that aren't Lovecraft, that will still have you fearing the unknown. Also, it acts as a cool transition slide.
Oh, hey, I'm back. Speaking of insight, to me, the biggest cultural touchpoint for eldritch horror within the medium of video games has to be Bloodborne. Maybe it's surface level. I haven't played a ton of Lovecraftian video games, so if anyone has any recos, feel free to drop them in the comments. Bloodborne doesn't really dwell on what's impossible to describe, as much as it focuses on what's impossible to see. The mechanic used to express this idea is insight. Essentially, the higher the number, the more you'll be able to visualize the horrors that were previously hidden in plain sight. You'll realize that there have always been amygdalas climbing on the buildings, enemies that have always had eyes on their weapons, and the sound of babies crying in the distance, but you just didn't have the knowledge to understand it all. To me, this feels like a very creative way to use the medium of video games to adapt Lovecraftian ideas in a way that no other medium can do. Bloodborne's insight mechanic is also used to get across the key theme of the game, which is the one-to-one relationship between the pursuit of knowledge and the descent into madness. Ignorance is bliss in the world of Bloodborne, as most of the key players end up committing awful crimes against humanity in an attempt to quote-unquote gain eyes on the inside. What starts as curiosity ends with some kind of cosmic Sisyphusian punishment for wiping out a fishing village and killing their god in Mother Kos. In Dredge, I couldn't resist the urge to learn either. Like a Lovecraft protagonist, I sailed right into the fog, tempted by curiosity, and all I learned was my lesson. That's a weird looking fish.
Can I catch it? Oh!
Looks like it's trying to catch you.
No!